guys, welcome back to Fourth Wall Reactions. Tonight I am taking a final look back on Series 7 of Doctor Who. This will also encompass the specials and maybe a few of the extra things that I watched in conjunction with the 50th anniversary. I've been looking forward to this and not looking forward to this. I've actually procrastinated on actually recording this. As I record this, I am deep into Series 8. I was excited about looking back on Series 7, particularly with the specials that were involved in the 50th anniversary and all of that. But I also was hesitant because, as I said, in the final episodes of Series 7 and the whole regeneration and the specials, I don't like to say goodbyes. Goodbyes get me misty. And, this is the final wrap-up for Matt Smith as the Doctor, and also for Karen Gillan and Arthur Darvill. Just a lot of people. There was some changeover this time. Damn. Yeah, so there's a certain amount of finality involved in doing this series wrap-up, and But I think I'll enjoy looking back because it was, I think, a really unique series. It was, to me, very different than either of the first two Matt Smith series. Definitely different than Series 5. I mean, obviously, in Series 5, you're introducing people and, setting up new stories to tell. And Series 6, to an extent, was a continuation of that. But Series 5, in particular, had a very strong continuing arc that went throughout the series. So did Series 6. I don't think as much as Series 5. This one, to me, the connecting thread was the mystery of Clara being the impossible girl. And it was very smart planting that in the very first episode, even though Amy and Rory were still continuing. And it didn't really come back until Amy and Rory were gone. However, that's where the seed was planted. And then just the through arc of the Doctor and what Trenzler meant to him, what his whole future and future regeneration, all of that. But I don't think that those were dealt with as extensively throughout each episode along the way, as much as the two prior series. So I think this series was very unique. It was very different. I am aware that I watched it in a very different manner than people who watched it real time. You guys had to watch it in chunks and wait a long time. And for me, it was just one big thing. And so I think that helped unite it because I think it was sort of segmented. Not separate. I really don't, there wasn't like a huge shift in tone or anything. It just, you could tell that like this first part was a chunk and then there was a Christmas special and then there was this chunk and then there was the chunk of the 50th anniversary specials and the Christmas special. So it was very obviously segmented out, but my watching it in this way really helped connect it. And I think because most of the episodes of Series 7 were told in just, from him truly jumping from time to time and just living these hundreds, if not thousands of years of his life, I really felt like this series was the Doctor's point of view in a way that it hasn't been the prior two series. I mean, there's always a little bit of the Doctor's point of view. It's his show. He is the title character. But I think to an extent, Series 5 was told through Amy's POV. She was the girl. She was the mystery girl back then and held the key to rebooting the universe. And a lot of that was told, with that perspective in mind. And so much of Series 6 was through River, not maybe through her POV, but so much of it was about River. And it was really, River's origin story contrasted with the Doctor's death. The death that never was. But just to me, this series felt very much like we were seeing everything as the Doctor would see it. Amy and Rory's life in pieces and bits and chunks along the way, because they weren't there with him the whole time. And it wasn't until we got to the second half of the series and until Clara joined him that I felt like it started to really coalesce. And then that took us into the specials. So it was just a really uniquely paced kind of series, kind of a situation. And as far as all that goes, I think a lot of it's down to just production, what they were dealing with prepping for the 50th anniversary. I don't know. I'm still not to the point where I feel safe going and looking at articles online about the behind the scenes stuff. So I'm just guessing. And then from some of your comments on it, I'm just guessing that's how everything went down. I thought it was a very unique series. And I think because of the 50th anniversary and how it all wrapped up was... it's hard to say if this is one of my favorite series, because, I mean, there are a lot of really strong contenders. When is there not a strong series? Definitely there are segments of it, which are my favorite. Favorite time in New Who, definitely, if that makes any sense. So maybe not the entire series as a whole, but certainly there were so many really strong points within it that I just love, so... For me, it was very successful. I really loved it. I laughed. I sobbed. And speak of sobbing, I get to say farewell to Matt Smith as the Doctor.
How do I say it?
Makes me sad. During certain points of Series 5 and Series 6, I've been asked by people in the comment section, so what do you now that you've gone through this many episodes, or... now that you've reached this point, what do you think of Matt Smith? And my answer has always been, I really enjoy him as the Doctor, which is very true. I have always enjoyed Matt Smith as the Doctor. I think he made a really good Doctor. My impression of him from the beginning was that he was quite different from David Tennant, although that perspective has changed a little. It was always a little tough for me to say exactly what it is about his performance that I really enjoyed so much. I already knew that Matt Smith was great at drama from having been in The Crown. I saw that's his only work prior to this that I had seen, even though I know The Crown came after this. I really loved all the comedy, the more comedic episodes that he was in, like The Lodger, and just some of his more comedic moments. I always thought he had a great rapport with Alex Kingston as River Song. Really distinct rapport with Karen Gillan as Amy. A very distinct rapport with Arthur Darvill. They had their own distinct relationship as well. But when it came down to just what is it about him in particular, not how he relates to the other actors, I just, I just didn't really have the vocabulary until this series and until the 50th anniversary. When I watched in conjunction with the 50th anniversary, obviously I watched The Adventure and Adventure in Space and Time. And all that stuff about the original vision of the Doctor as being, this older guy who was kind of... He could be stern and he could be forceful, but he always had this lightness and this twinkle. That is exactly what Matt Smith brings to the table for me in this performance. So it really wasn't until the very end that I was like, that is it. Like this light bulb went off and I was like, yes, this is the Doctor. And it's so weird that it took this long to be able to really verbalize that. I think in Series 5 in my review, I think I called him mischievous, and that wasn't quite right. Because to me, mischievous implies sort of has a little tiny bit of or it can have a tiny bit of a negative connotation. And I didn't mean that at all. So I wasn't really like, what is it about his performance that is so particular to him, or that it really stands out to me? So the whole 50th anniversary and all the extra things leading up to that really crystallized for me what it is that I actually loved so much about Matt Smith's performance as the 11th Doctor. It's not the only thing that I loved, but it just, I don't know whether it's his cute little face or just the performance. I don't know what it is, but he definitely had that Doctor twinkle. I'm gonna miss him so much. It was a really slow burn with me and Matt Smith as the Doctor. It really was. I liked him from the beginning. It took me a little while to get used to him. I've always said that for me, he really became the Doctor about the time of the Angels two-parter. But that was more just my perception rather than his performance. And just since then, it's just been this really steady climb of me getting more and more and more attached. I mean, I think I became more attached to him in the last couple of episodes than I was. So, yeah. It was devastating to have to lose this actor and, have the switch in Doctors. Not just as, I was going to say, just as my attachment to him was really growing. My attachment to him has been growing all along, but it's really culminated here. It's sad to have to say goodbye once I reach this point, but there we are. But there are always reruns, so. Anyway, kudos to Matt Smith. I really loved him as the 11th Doctor. And not just in this series, but some of my favorite performances of his were in Vincent and the Doctor. In the gallery, that scene where he's talking about the good pile and the bad pile. It was just a very touching performance. I always love that. The Time of Angels. And I think another favorite one of his performance in particular is in A Good Man Goes to War. I think he got to do a whole spectrum, a whole range of, his acting and then also what the Doctor is. He was forceful, he was mighty, he was...
Look, I'm angry, that's new.
And at the end, when he found out what he found out, he had the twinkle. And everything was great in that episode. Similarly, in Series 7, just the ending, the name of the Doctor, the day of the Doctor, the time of the Doctor. I think he just worked through every single emotion and range and expression that the Doctor had. But, some of his performances were not always my favorite episodes. Nightmare in Silver and the Crimson Horror are probably on the lower end of my spectrum as far as episodes go, but I really loved his performances in those episodes. So he was great. What else can I say? I am going to miss him dearly. And just as far as the Doctor goes in Series 7, I think it's really fascinating that last series, his whole arc was about possibly preventing his own death and dealing with that. And here his arc is coming to terms with his actual real death that he once again averted. But yeah, I thought that was a fascinating choice of an arc for him this series. And of course, I also have to say farewell to Karen Gillan and Arthur Darvill, Amy and Rory. Some of my favorite characters. Although, to be honest, I do feel like I sort of said farewell to them at the end of Series 6 when the Doctor decided not to have them along anymore in order to keep them safe. And then we saw them once again in Series 6. And then at the beginning of this series, they were back again, sort of, kind of. And I thought that was a very interesting choice as well, because if the Doctor had said he didn't want to endanger them and they need to stay and live their lives. But of course they missed each other and he missed having them and their family. They're more than companions. They are family. And they wanted to be with him and he wanted to be with them. So they started coming on adventures with him. And, once again, their lives were in danger. That had not changed because when you travel with the Doctor, your lives are in danger. Now, I know they probably just only showed those in the episodes. I'm sure they had other adventures where everything was fun and there were no problems. There were no Daleks. There were no, cubes that caused heart attacks or anything like that. But I did feel kind of like I had already said goodbye to them and I was just sort of getting all this extra Amy and Rory stuff at the beginning. I do feel really bad and think it's tragic that the episode where the Doctor loses them and where we lose them is right after the episode where Rory's dad tells them they should go. They should just, don't be afraid, live your take advantage of this opportunity. Now, maybe that wasn't the first adventure that they had after he said that, but that is the first episode they had after they said that. So I was like, oh, this is... But I feel like that their final episodic appearance, was very fitting, for they had a short arc of opening Series 7 being separated and not communicating and things getting in the way. I do feel like so much could have been cleared up had they just talked, but for whatever reason, they were disconnected and they couldn't do that. And I think that they were, brought back together, and then in their final episode together, not only once, but twice, Amy was willing to die for Rory. Rory was willing to die for Amy. And in seasons past, we've had a lot of that reiteration of Amy choosing Rory and them choosing to be with each other and going to incredible lengths to be with each other. But here within the same episode, they are reaffirming their choice to be together. Amy even says this is marriage. In a way, that moment of them stepping off the building together is kind of leap of faith, but it's also a choice. As is when she chooses to turn her back to the weeping angel and having faith that it will send her to Rory. And I always think it's kind of beautiful that in Amy's first adventure with the Doctor in The Beast Below, it starts off with this shot of her just sort of floating in space and her hair is all wavy and floaty. And I think her dialogue over that scene is about her, running away from things. And that one of her final scenes is kind of a visually similar floaty thing as she has completely embraced Rory and is no longer running away from anything. So I think that these two things, I really love that bookend of visualness and the theme. Even in the beginning, she's running, and at the end, she is not at all. She is choosing to embrace life with Rory. And I think that's really beautiful. It makes me teary. I did get teary. And as far as Rory goes, I just love him so much. I think that he has never really wavered. I think even during this separation, he didn't really waver from choosing Amy. I think they had their problems and maybe they needed space, but I don't think Rory's issue was ever, in question how he felt about her at all. I think his arc was more about just, growing up and becoming this confident, I was going to say becoming brave, but he's always been brave. He's always been the one, to step forward, even if he has felt scared doing it. There's so much to love about Rory. Even when Rory wasn't Rory, and when he was a fake Centurion. I just adore him, and I already miss him. I miss all of them already. Some of my favorite performances of his were in The Girl Who Waited, and of course I loved him as the Centurion. Who wouldn't? And I think both Karen Gillan and Arthur Darvill are very solid performers. They did such a great job. I wish that I had seen... I've seen Karen Gillan in all the Avengers stuff in the Marvel universe. And she is very different there. I wish I'd seen more of her and Arthur Darvill in different things to be able to kind of compare. But I feel like Amy and Rory are so well written and just well performed. Arthur Darvill's just got a lot of awesome timing and facial expressions and just, I don't know, they're both great. And I'm grateful that I got a little more of them in Series 7 and that Series 6 wasn't it. So, yay. River Song. I love River Song. How many times can I say that? Probably too many, but there you go. I'm never going to stop saying it. I love River Song. I should have known from Melody Malone that was her, that she was going to return in the Angels episode. Oh my God. Yeah, it's always just the biggest pleasure to see her. The character's hilarious. I think Alex Kingston plays her so well. I really loved her in the Angels episode. And I like that in the next episode that we saw her in, that she was kind of like a totally different River. Like she was an echo of River. Is it tied to the library? And that even in that guise, she got to say goodbye to Matt Smith as the Doctor. Since, technically, chronologically, our first moment of seeing her was with David Tennant, but I feel like the birth of River Song and the connection with River Song really happened with Matt Smith as the Doctor. I know I'm gonna see her again. I know, and I cannot wait to see how she interacts with Peter Capaldi. But it's just the whole development of River Song happened with this actor as the Doctor. So I'm glad they got those moments, and that goodbye just sent me. It just sent me. Ugh.
Goodbye, sweetie.
I'm gonna cry again, damn it. And I actually thought that might be River coming down those stairs in the time of the Doctor, but it wasn't. So anyway, it's not really a goodbye to her. I'm really looking forward to seeing her again. I like that she also got to say goodbye to her mother and father, and that she got to travel, apparently, a little bit with the Doctor after that. Yes, more River, hopefully in my future. And now we come to Clara, the impossible girl.
Ah, hello.
Who was a puzzle. She was a mystery. I admit it, I was totally flummoxed as to what she was. Was she a clone? Was she an android? Flesh? I don't know. After the very first episode, the Dalek episode, I actually thought that it might be a situation like we've seen before, a Doctor Who, of actors appearing as different characters and then going on to play a more significant role of a totally different character. So I thought maybe that was going to be it, because we saw her in the first episode and then we didn't see her again until the Christmas Carol, I believe. No, not the Christmas Carol. The Christmas episode, the Snowman. Both of those episodes I really loved. And I thought for a moment, like, are we going to have a companion that's not contemporary with that? Because that would just be so trippy, I mean, it's happened for short periods of time before, but Nefertiti. But I thought that would be a really interesting idea. But it turns out that this idea, what it ended up being, was far more trippy than that. So I enjoyed every iteration of Clara that there was in this series. I just thought she's so quick and she's so smart. I think she can really keep up with the Doctor. She's very curious, but not without caution. And I like that, because sort of the younger companions sort of tend to just throw themselves in without thinking, like how Rose just threw herself in, and even Martha, who, was, and it has nothing to do with being smart, because Martha is very, very smart, but she, there's something about the Doctor that causes people to be impulsive because he's impulsive, I think, and it's contagious. But I really love that Clara said, let me think about this. Maybe not. I just like that she has that little bit of caution. It makes her very unique, I think. And I do think that the Doctor was sort of drawn to just the mystery of her, almost in a similar way that he was drawn to the mystery of Amy and what Amy's whole deal was about, and why she didn't, remember certain things, and why was there the crack in her bedroom wall, all of that. But I think that Clara presented an even more complex and obvious, puzzle to be solved, a riddle. But I do think that he genuinely liked her. I think that he genuinely liked all iterations of her. And I think they made a really good match. And again, a very distinct match. The show in general, I think, does such a great job of creating very individual companions that are very different from each other. And so it makes it really interesting to see what part of the Doctor's personality is going to be drawn out by them, too. So yeah, I really enjoy Clara. I think she's a fascinating character. She's a fashion icon. I'm glad she's sticking around. I don't know how long she sticks around. Please don't tell me. But I look forward to more adventures with her. I had so much fun with Series 7 as far as episodic characters go. I adore I guess they're the Paternoster gang. Am I saying that correctly? But Lady Vastra, Jenny, and Strax, just the three of them, they are too much. I loved their presence. Even when I didn't love an episode that they were in, I always loved their presence, their moments in it. There's something about the combination of the three of them that just sends me. They're just the most unlikely team, and yet they're absolutely hilarious together. So I love the three of them, and I do hope that they are around a lot more. It's Strax. And I love that we got an opportunity to meet Brian, Rory's dad. I mean, I think a part of me likes him because he's Mr. Weasley. But I think he's different than Mr. Weasley, and I really like the rapport between, he and Rory. This is a very father-son kind of, just a really nice, easy relationship. But he's just a muffin. I wish we'd had him around as much as, say, a Wilf, which is another example of just like this wonderful family character that is there and giving support and advice and having their own adventures on the TARDIS with the Doctor. Like, I mean, he's a companion. He had his share of adventures. It's a shame that he wasn't introduced earlier. So we don't really know a whole lot about, Amy and Rory's families, other than Riversong, Melody. So it would have been nice to have known the parents and everybody else sooner, but I'm really grateful for the time that I got with them because he's just a sweetheart. I don't know what it is about him. And then we just had a lot of interesting guest actors. I love Ben Browder. In A Town Called Mercy. I love him from Farscape, so I always expected his career to be just so much bigger than it is. And so I just love seeing him wherever he turns up in a project. I'm like, if you haven't seen Farscape, I really feel like Doctor Who people would actually really like Farscape. And they had the wonderful Warwick Davis, you had Rupert Graves, just a lot of really great guest actors. I first saw Rupert Graves in A Room with a View years and years ago, ages ago, a lifetime ago, my regeneration ago. But of course, I know that he would know Moffat from Sherlock. I don't know if that's why he was brought in or just, who knows. But it was a pleasure to see him. I actually really like Warwick Davis. He's a favorite of mine from Willow, the movie. And I love that he gets to be a lead, I really appreciated the role that he played in that episode. And again, not exactly my favorite episode, but between his appearance and Matt Smith's performance, I'm like, yeah, it's a lot of good stuff. A lot of creepy villains, creatures. This time, listen, the angels are probably the creepiest. I'm still having this debate on who is creepier, the scarecrow people or the angels, but I think the cherub versions of the angels sent it over the edge. They freak me out. No. Yeah, they're the humanoid Daleks. I guess they're called the Dalek puppets or something. However, it's like normal person. Not that I'm normal, but a normal person, and then the Dalek thing coming out of their forehead. Oh my God, no. They're just creepy ass. Oh, and the Whisper Men. Oh. I'm actually kind of glad we didn't have too much of them. I don't know where they came from. Who cares? They were creepy. They were very scary. As were the snowmen. So there was a lot of creepy villains in this series, which I like. I like to be creeped out. It's kind of fun. So yeah, we'll see if those damn cherubs come back. Oh God. And as far as the great intelligence goes, I think I wish that I had actually seen more Doctor Who before so I could understand its motivations a little bit better. Oh, and we had actual Daleks back as well, because I think in Series 6 there were no Daleks, right? And we had them right off the bat in this one, so Daleks again. And then, of course, we finished with basically everybody again finding the Doctor on Trenzalore and taking a shot. Just chock full of aliens and villains and all that good stuff. All right, we are at that point where I talk about my favorite episodes. And again, if this is your first time joining me for a series review, I don't rank them so much as group them together in just, loose categories of really loved it, liked it, didn't quite connect with it. It's very hard for me to pick favorites. I'm feeling like if anyone ever asks me for my favorite Doctor, my head's gonna explode. Because they're all so different and wonderful. And that's how I feel about the episodes that I really love. I can't really rank them. I just can't do it. So just keep that in mind. These are in no particular order. I really love The Angels Take Manhattan. Just, it's a river song. It's angels. Everyone is in it. All the main people. It had that kind of cool noir thing happening. They turned the Statue of Liberty into Weeping Angel. But I just think emotionally also was one of my favorites. Just everything that I talked about before with Amy and Rory, continuing to choose each other and willing to risk death in order to be with each other is just a beautiful thing. River Song emphasizing husband a lot in that episode, and just the general theme of, marriage and what people do for each other. And that it is a continual choice. It's kind of both a leap of faith in the beginning, but it's also any long-term relationship, whether it's an official marriage or just a long-term relationship. Commitments of that nature are a series of choices. And I like that not only just in this episode, you have multiple choices for that end. You have the entire history of Rory and Amy being a choice after a choice after a choice after a choice. So there was something very bittersweet and beautiful about that episode, and also very tragic. But they got to live out their lives together, and I know from the minisode that they eventually did have a child, adopt a child. So, it's beautiful. So that's one of my favorites. That is up there. I love the Day of the Doctor. How could I not love the Day of the Doctor? Did you not love the Day of the Doctor? Everyone has to love the Day of the Doctor. I mean, just having Tennant and Smith together alone, and then all the other iterations of the Doctor, and having them use, the stock footage to incorporate all the other iterations of the Doctor, John Hurt as the Doctor. I do admit, I wish it had either been Eccleston or perhaps Paul McGann, but the fact that you get John Hurt as well is just like, ugh, are you kidding me? So I love that aspect of it. And what I really love too is, I think I said it in the commentary for that episode, is that, so much of the focus on like a comparison of Doctors is comparing how each one is unique and how they are different from one another. What I loved about the Day of the Doctor is that having them side by side, and you kind of get to see where they are alike. And I loved how their not choreography, but their movements, mimicked each other. They had like the same spontaneous responses, like when they saw the other one's glasses, like, oh yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Just so you got to see not only how they are distinct and separate and unique, but how they are also very much alike. And that doesn't come up a lot in comparisons, because when you compare, you're sort of noting where they are their own individual thing. So I just really love that about that episode. I love the Elizabeth thing playing out. I love it's not even a running joke. It is a recurring plot with the Doctor and this Queen and the iterations of her. Not iterations as far as, she's not the same Queen over and over again, but there is a Queen Elizabeth over and over again. Elizabeth the 10, Elizabeth the First. And there was so much to love about the episode. I can't even go through the whole thing. I really love the concept of the Time Lord, the paintings, 3D paintings that they can sort of travel through. I think as far as the Gallifrey question goes, I think I brought it up in that commentary too, but I don't think I said it correctly. So my thinking about how journeys end, how the Time Lords trying to return and getting shut down, and this, how those two things I was thinking of, I was thinking, okay, from day one of New Who, you had the Doctor thinking that he was responsible for the destruction of his civilization. And then I thought when the Time Lords returned, that proved to him that he hadn't done that, that they were in a time lock. So I think when we got to this episode, when it was the day of the Doctor, and I thought that at least John Hurt's version of the Doctor wouldn't have known that. David Tennant's Doctor wouldn't have known that. He was just getting to that. It was the next special that he was going to do, wasn't it? Or one of them. So Matt Smith's Doctor would have had this knowledge that, oh, you know, the Time Lords actually have already tried to return. I didn't destroy them after all. So I think that's where the confusion is. I think in my mind, I think that the time lock and the destruction of Gallifrey are the same thing. That Gallifrey couldn't be destroyed if it were in a time lock. Maybe that they're not the same thing. So maybe that's how, anyway. I was a little confused about that. I still remain a little confused about that. But that did nothing to stop me from loving this episode. It was amazing. And then on to the time of the Doctor. It was both delightful and tragic. And I loved it. I loved how it incorporated all these elements from all of Matt Smith's previous series. You know, they had the crack in the wall and the silence, and then, you know, the other Time Lords calling out to him from the silence and bringing back all his enemies, which reminded me of the Big Bang and the Pandorica. There were a lot of heartbreaking moments in it, though. That poem that she read from the cracker, it was so, I just got really emotional hearing that. And then just his regeneration, not the regeneration itself, but the moments leading up to the regeneration where he was saying farewell and taking off the bow tie, and just, it was heartbreaking. It was just truly heartbreaking. And I think that, you know, it was very different from Tennant's regeneration, and that Tennant was all alone. He had visited all of his prior companions, but ultimately, when he regenerated, he was by himself. And I really like that not only was Matt Smith's Doctor with Clara, that touch of Baby Pond just, it sent me. It just sent me. So, yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite episodes, not only of this series, but just of the entire show that I've seen so far. Also loved, along those lines, the name of the Doctor. Everything. The day of the Doctor, the time of the Doctor, the name of the Doctor. I mean, it had all these elements that I really loved about it. You know, like the Strax and Vastra and Jenny. River Song, of course. Of course. Always River Song. But just the reveal of who and what Clara was. It's like, what? And I just thought that was so unique. And still, even once you figured it out, still seemingly impossible. Like, what an impossible idea. To be sort of step into a time vortex of sorts and be scattered throughout somebody's lifetime. That it's not really you, but it's based on you. Yeah, so I really loved that one. I really loved the mystery of the Impossible Girl. Another one I loved, also because of Clara and her mystery, was the journey to the center of the TARDIS. We could never speak about that damn salvage crew again, and I'd be happy. But the aspects about that had to do with the TARDIS, and Clara and the Doctor just made that one of my favorites as well. The Snowmen Christmas special was really good. It was really one of my... I can always say that. It's one of my favorite Christmas specials. But it was like, another brick in the mystery of Clara. Just another piece of the puzzle of the mystery that is Clara. And then similarly, the Asylum of the Daleks was also up there, also because of Clara. Although, looking back on it from this vantage point, I really love it for it being Clara, but also having Rory and Amy in it and having some overlap with them, but not quite. Because A, it's not really Clara, and B, they never truly met. They did speak to each other. So I really love that one. And it's interesting because I've said in the past that Dalek episodes are not always my favorite episodes. But in this instance, like as I think back to that episode, to me, the more memorable things about it were less about the whole Dalek part and more about Clara, the Oswin souffle girl, along with what they were trying to do. So it was about the Daleks, but not entirely about the Daleks. Also in this category are The Power of Three and The Bells of St. John. I loved in The Power of Three getting a glimpse kind of similar to The Lodger, but in this one, Amy and Rory know the Doctor so well, he doesn't have to try and pretend to be somebody he's not. He's just full on the Doctor, and that brings problems of its own. But I just love watching him just try and hang out with his parents-in-law. And I love the mystery of the cubes. I think once it was revealed, like, who was manipulating them and what they were doing, that didn't so much concern me, but I really love the mystery of the cubes and then just seeing them all together. And The Bells of St. John being our first episode with current Clara, present Clara. I like the kind of little Matrix touches that were throughout a little bit. But it was fascinating to meet her and deepen that mystery of, what is this girl all about? So yeah, those are my top tier. As for the ones that I liked, I liked Hyde a lot because of the guest stars. I'm going to mispronounce his name. It's Dougray Scott. I didn't really recognize him. He actually looked a lot older than how I think of Dougray Scott. And retroactively, the woman who played his assistant in that, who played Verity Lambert in the special. So I really loved their vibe and what they were doing. And I really loved the take on the haunted house and the ghost. That it wasn't really a ghost. It was somebody trapped in time travel. It was really somebody trapped in time. That was really fascinating. I remember thinking they didn't even really need the critter aspect of it. But there was nothing wrong with it. It was really packed. I always love how they have a twist on the supernatural stuff. And so the ghost not really being a ghost, I like that. She was just trapped in a time something or other. It was cool. I enjoyed the Cold War. Or not the Cold War, just Cold War. Because they had a lot of all the Game of Thrones guest actors. And the 80s references just killed me. But also it was a good story. And it had a lot of genuine chills. So I enjoyed that one. Also going to mispronounce it, The Rings of Akhaten. Was it? I forget how to say it. But that episode, that for me, I remember it taking a little while to get going, but it had such a strong ending. It had such beautiful music. It was really powerful. And then I think, that introduction, the concept of the leaf and, the possibilities of living your life and that there are no limits, that, anything can happen. And then the performances at the end were just so strong. So I really ended up enjoying that one. That was one of those ones where I wasn't sure when I first started out. I'm like, oh yeah, the way it ended just really, I was like, yeah, this is good. I enjoyed A Town Called Mercy, not just because of Ben Browder, but yes, because it was him, I enjoyed it. But I also really loved some of the scenes in it were great. I thought the scenes between the two doctors. I love that scene where he was in the jail cell and talking about this concept of, you carry the souls of the people that you've wronged, and just the parallels between them. And even, it's been a while since I've seen it, but even now I remember like that there was a clock ticking in the background, just sort of representing time and how much time do you have, and facing the things that you've done. So I really love that scene. There were a lot of good moments in that episode. And I surprisingly enjoyed the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. I don't know why I was surprised by that, but I think because it's a Christmas story that's not too traditionally Christmassy. I mean, it does start off, with kids and presents and, all of that. The Doctor being somewhat of a mystical, weird Santa, cat in the hat, as he always seems to be in a Christmas special. But I loved how the elements of Christmas were translated into this story about the trees. And you had that trio of, what were they again? They were like surveyors or something. Like the three wise men. And miraculous things happening. They managed to incorporate a lot of these Christmas ideas without being literal. So I think I really enjoyed it on that front. And then just having a lovely outcome too. It was nice and Christmassy. In the end where he rejoined the pawns and he shed a tear, made me shed a tear. A lot of bawling from me in Series 7. I think more so than... I think Series 7 was on par with Series 4 with how many times it really got me. So those I really enjoyed. And there were only a few episodes where I felt like, there were things that I liked about them. Dinosaurs on a spaceship. Maybe not my favorite episode, but it had Brian. What the hell? And the lovely relationship between, father and son. It is really now interesting thinking back, now that I have seen An Adventure in Space and Time and seeing David Bradley as the first Doctor. And now having seen him as Mr. Filch and Walder Frey in Game of Thrones, he just doesn't generally play nice characters. His character, also kind of a nasty piece of work. One of the few times that the Doctor has exacted revenge. Scary. So there were some good things and some not good things, but it had Brian in it. Hello. So I wasn't overly crazy about Nightmare in Silver, but it has one of my absolute favorite Matt Smith performances in it. And it has Warwick Davis. So it had some really good aspects to it. And the concept was really good. I don't know kind of what happened maybe in the execution of it. I'm not sure. But, there were a lot of good things about it. Also rounding out this tier, this group of episodes is, for me, the Crimson Horror. There were things I liked about it. I always loved the Victorian era. We have my favorite trio of supporting characters. I just didn't happen to connect with the story. It was Diana Rigg. I don't know what my problem was, but those three, I think, were sort of my least favorite of the series, but each one of them had something about them that I really did enjoy. I think a very successful series. And then, of course, in addition to just the regular episodes, I watched a lot of extra things. I don't want to get into all the prequels and minisodes and all the extra stuff, but I am really glad that I went back and I watched some Classic Who, the very first Classic Who, An Adventure in Time and Space, Space and Time. I'm ever so slightly dyslexic. I will always screw that up. And the Doctor Who movie. I'm really glad that normally I don't always watch the extra stuff, but I'm really, really glad that I did that because it completely informed those final episodes for me. Seeing the history of Doctor Who as dramatized there and connecting it back to Matt Smith, which I was so shocked when that happened. And whoever did the score for that, I actually meant to check. I don't think it was Murray Gold, but that score was incredible. That really set a tone. And, the Doctor Who movie, yes, it is of an era, but I really enjoyed seeing Paul McGann. And I think, just having seen that, it is inspiring me to, I will go back and do the radio shows that he has voiced. So there will be more Doctor Who. It's just like the gift that keeps on giving. But seeing all of that stuff and then catching up on all the minisodes and all the extra things that are associated, I think it really gave me this background and structure. And even though I have missed or not started yet watching Classic Who, I think those elements of watching before I hit the 50th anniversary special and before I reached the very last Matt Smith episode just really helped shape my experience of the show and just helped me love Matt Smith that much more. So I'm really grateful that I went through with all of those. They were great. And the Doctor Who movie had its moments. But I'm still very, very glad that I watched it. Also, this series, we saw the TARDIS evolve, another change for the TARDIS. I think my favorite TARDIS console is from series 5 and 6. Just that whimsical, crazy console with, old-fashioned typewriter and all the stuff that was just... I felt like every time I looked back, there was something new about it. So when it shifted to this new console, I felt like, oh, no, I'm going to miss that. But, it really did reflect sort of the change in the Doctor. And it's not like I didn't like the new console. It's just my favorite was the older one. But this one's pretty cool. Has a really cool, funky look to it. I'll get used to it. The production values this series were super high. I mean, obviously for the standalone specials, not standalone plot-wise, but you know what I mean. They didn't air as part of the series. Obviously, they poured some bucks into that. A lot of the effects, the cinematography were really great. I continue to love the Silurian makeup. Anytime I see Lady Vastra, I'm always blown away by that because it's so good. I know it's someone in a mask, but it's so well done that you're like, oh, it could almost be, It's very cool. The music, as always, top notch. I can't even take the time to pick out my favorite bits, but I definitely remember loving the score for the Snowmen, just in general, was really lovely. Oh, that moment in the Angels Take Manhattan when Amy and Rory are falling, that kills me every single time. And of course, the rings of Akaten. Obviously, though, the song, had a great score. Just really top-notch this time around. And that, I think, is it. I just really love this series. For those of you who are wondering, what do I think of Matt Smith now? I think he made for an amazing Doctor. I grew more and more attached to him with every episode. I don't think I have ever been more attached to him than the final 2 specials because the attachment just kept growing. So it was really devastating to see him change. And as I record this, as I think I said earlier, I am deep into series 8. I'm basically halfway through. We'll talk about Peter Capaldi as the Doctor. But I do miss Matt Smith. I think he was an incredible Doctor. Great performances, great episodes, some of my favorite episodes of the entire show. It's definitely a switch going forward. Usually when I'm wrapping one of these up, I kind of have I don't really make predictions because I can't predict anything with this show. But I usually try and do some kind of I wonder about this, or will this maybe happen, or will this turn out to be true? But because so many things were wrapped up, I think the only thing I can wonder about that is left over from Series 7 and Matt Smith's time is, when is River coming back? So I look forward to her return. I am enjoying the continued adventures of the impossible girl with the new Doctor. But it's interesting because Clara really only had a short amount of episodes to bond with Matt Smith. So building that rapport with the new Doctor, I think, I don't want to say easy, but maybe not as big of a transition as maybe it has been in the past. I think the only other companion I've seen so far that's had to do that is Rose. And she and her new doctor hit it off famously. They were actually more flirty and connected than when he had been portrayed by Christopher Eccleston. So this is kind of switched the other way around. But I don't want to get into Series 8 too much. I'm really glad to have taken this look back upon Matt Smith. And yeah, I just look forward to more adventures with the Doctor, regardless of who plays him. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to me babble on. And feel free to leave any of your thoughts below. What were your favorite episodes? What did you think of Matt Smith? What did you think of Amy and Rory and River and Clara? I'd really love to know. So thanks so much for listening, and be sure to tune in for more reactions to more Doctor Who. All right, thanks, guys. Bye. All right, here we go. And I know a lot of that is maybe... oh, no. Do I have that? Oh, I'm sorry. It's not good. And watch him regenerate just as... I don't want to say just as I was getting... I was already...